Iska was an overpowered swordsman who ended up thrown in prison for sparing his enemies' lives. But everything changes when he gets a shot at redemption, as long as he can take down the enemy's insanely powerful princess. Except then, he ends up getting mesmerized by her melons and betraying his own country to be her simp. This story kicks off when humanity's biggest empire goes on the offensive, locking up anyone with the power to use magic. To defend themselves, the mages build a separate nation, the Nebulis Sovereignty, kicking off a 100-year war between the two nations. Meanwhile, Iska, the empire's strongest soldier, mysteriously frees an enemy mage and helps her escape. Result, he loses his rank and goes straight to jail for treason. A year later, Iska gets released again, but he only earns his freedom if he can defeat the Sovereignty's most powerful mage, known as the Ice Calamity Witch. Iska takes the mission, on the condition that he gets his old squad back together. A bit later, he joins up with the team, made up of Jin, Nene, and their captain, Mismis, who brief him on the mission right on the front lines. After reaching the base, they decide to head straight to the front to help the other soldiers. On the way, Iska and Jin sense an incoming attack, and everyone dives for cover just as an astral blast hits the truck. Once the attacking mages reveal themselves, Iska takes down the lead mage and her assistant. But then, an earth golem shows up, courtesy of an overpowered mage named Rin. She promises him a painless death, but Iska's already sick of her smug face, so he smashes the golem before telling the others to go help the soldiers on the front line. After they leave, Rin regenerates the golem and goes back on the attack, but Iska casually dodges every hit while demanding to know where the Ice Calamity Witch is. Rin refuses to talk and keeps attacking, so Iska closes the distance for a finishing blow and tries to end her. In the next instant, he notices a thick fog rolling in and senses an overwhelming presence, so he backs off just before the famous Ice Calamity Witch Aliceliese reveals herself. After turning the entire forest into an ice age, Aliceliese thanks Rin for stalling the enemy and destroys the reactor powering Iska's camp. She then tells him to surrender, because obviously, she's way too powerful for some random swordsman. But Iska stays determined to capture her, so she throws up an ice wall to crush him. After Iska easily hops over the wall, Aliceliese unleashes a barrage of icicles until he takes a cut. Except then, he copies the exact same move. She throws up a shield to block and can't figure out how he pulled that off. As he keeps pressing the attack, fake Elsa backs off and asks why he's so persistent. Iska explains just how determined he is to end the war between their two nations. Surprised, Aliceliese says she also wants to reach world peace, right before suddenly slipping on the ice. Iska catches her, but she gets all flustered and jumps away from him, vowing to defeat him before flying off on her giant pet bird. A few hours later, Aliceliese is already back at the Sovereignty, still stuck on the fact that Iska shares the same dream of world peace as her. To take her mind off it, she spends the next day at an opera house in the neutral city, where fighting is banned. Once there, she starts soaking her napkin with tears, but some random gentleman hands her a fresh one. After the show, she tries to thank him, only to find out it's Iska. A few hours before that, Mismis had noticed Iska was in a slump, so she gave him tickets to the show to cheer him up. A bit later, he was sitting there trying to enjoy the show when Aliceliese started flooding her seat with tears, so he offered her the napkin, figuring she was just some random crybaby. In the present, Aliceliese loses it and challenges Iska to another duel, but Rin reminds her that fighting is strictly banned in that city. She still accuses Iska of stalking her, but he fires back that she would have noticed him if she wasn't such an emotional crybaby. Aliceliese gets heated again, but Rin manages to stop her from turning the whole place into an ice rink. Aliceliese finally leaves to keep the peace, and after wandering the city for a few minutes, she and Rin find a spot for lunch. Except the whole restaurant is already booked by other customers, so the waiter decides to let them use a reserved table until the actual customer shows up. Minutes later, she's back, with Iska, and this time it's Rin who loses it. She figures he's just there to hit on her, but after he explains he booked the table before the show, Aliceliese tells her to chill because there's no other option. Rin still rejects the idea of eating with the enemy. So Aliceliese explains that walking out just because of him would make them look weak. With that, they decide to stay, and Iska places their order fast. Shockingly, he orders the exact same thing as Aliceliese, and the two start bonding over their mutual love of noodles. While Rin regrets ever tagging along, she eventually gets tired of the back and forth and makes Aliceliese focus on the food so they can leave. When they finally get back to the palace, Rin tells Aliceliese to forget everything that happened. Aliceliese then decides to keep Iska's napkin, and Rin reminds her that he's probably the most powerful enemy they've ever faced. Aliceliese still argues that she sees him as an enemy too, but after Rin leaves, she keeps the napkin tucked away. While she struggles to fall asleep, Iska is already dreaming, reliving the day his bus got attacked by lizards. He was about to get wrecked when a girl who looked just like Aliceliese showed up to help. The next day, he joins the rest of the squad for a training session. And after Mismis's weak little body forces her to take a break, a cat girl named Risia shows up to announce she'll be leading the next mission. After making sure Iska's okay, she hands out tickets to an art exhibit and tells him to relax with that instead of some lame play. Around the same time, Aliceliese goes to visit her mom, Miliver, who also warns her about Iska. Miliver then shows her a crystal formation used to keep the Sovereignty's founder locked away, who also happens to be the twin sister of the Great Witch, who almost burned the entire empire down. Miliver explains that the crystal formation started cracking after Aliceliese's fight with Iska, and Aliceliese recalls how strange his astral art felt. Miliver, again, warns her to stay away from Iska at least until they figure out who he really is. Minutes later, Aliceliese finds Rin and says she's planning to go out again because she's having trouble sleeping. Rin immediately objects to the idea of heading to the neutral city, but Aliceliese promises to go somewhere completely different just to avoid Iska. Minutes later, Aliceliese runs smack into the one guy she was supposed to be avoiding, and immediately blames him for always being out and about when he should be training like an actual soldier. Iska, in turn, asks why she's going so far out of her way just to see some artist's work from the imperial capital. He suggests they walk together since they're headed the same way, but Aliceliese refuses. And surprising absolutely nobody, she gets lost and ends up right back at the fountain before Iska shows up again and offers to help her out once more. Surprised, she reminds him that they're enemies, in case he forgot. But Iska insists on checking out the exhibit with her anyway. His puppy dog wristwatch move folds her like a beach chair, so the two end up seeing the whole exhibit and vibing the entire time. Afterward, she buys him a drink to thank him for the help, but Iska ends up using her royal assets as a pillow. Hours later, Mismis is stressing over the mountain of paperwork she has to do, but then Iska shows up with drinks for everyone. Right after, Risha calls to check in on her before telling Iska to head to a meeting with the Senate. Minutes later, he arrives and they praise him for scaring off Aliceliese the other day, but he brushes off the compliment since she still destroyed the reactor. After reminding him that they just wanted him to fight Aliceliese, they promise to reinstate him as a sacred disciple, but he has to beat her in their next showdown. Minutes later, Iska is back in his room thinking about the time he spent with Aliceliese. He then calls Mismis to let her know he's going to skip training the next day for some personal business in the neutral city. Mismis gets curious and asks what it is, but he keeps insisting it's nothing, so she decides to tag along. Around the same time, Rin finds Aliceliese and explains how Iska was hugely respected in the Empire as the youngest sacred disciple before his imprisonment. Aliceliese is shocked and asks why they'd never heard of him. Rin then reminds her that his imprisonment happened over a year ago. She then hands Aliceliese an old document showing that Iska was locked up for freeing a mage from an Empire prison. Aliceliese is shocked all over again and tells Rin to track down the mage he freed to figure out his real intentions. Minutes later, Miliver shows up in her room, so she quickly hides Iska's napkin. Miliver then explains how the Empire used to hunt witches like deer and says nothing good can come from getting close to them. She also tells Aliceliese not to waste time or money on Empire art and leaves. Something clicks in Aliceliese after that, so she calls Rin and asks to be escorted to the neutral city the next day because she wants to figure out Iska's real intentions once and for all. The next day, driving to the neutral city, Mismis asks Iska about this personal business, which he refuses to explain, only saying he needs to handle something. Right then, Mismis spots an albatross flying overhead and starts freaking out. But Iska already knows whose bird that is, so he tells her to floor it. Minutes later, they arrive at the fountain where Rin and Aliceliese are already waiting. Except Mismis still has no idea who Aliceliese is, so she asks Iska for an explanation. When Aliceliese introduces herself, Mismis loses it and nearly wets herself, so Aliceliese suggests taking the conversation outside the city. Once they're out there, she asks why Iska would free a mage from the Sovereignty. Iska says he felt bad because she was so young, but Aliceliese is confused and asks why he attacked her in the forest if he was willing to go to prison over one mage. Rin also demands an answer, so Iska says nothing's changed about his ultimate goal, which involves both nations. He wants to end the war through a peace negotiation. But since the Sovereignty and his commanders in the Empire both refused to even consider it, he was going to kidnap a pure-blooded mage like Aliceliese to force the Sovereignty to respond. Aliceliese immediately tells him to forget it, because her mom would barely even blink even if he actually pulled that off. She still admits she's shocked someone like him even exists inside the Empire. Suddenly, she orders him to serve her and give up his loyalty to the Empire in exchange for a clean slate with the Sovereignty. While Mismis is still trying to keep up with their conversation, Rin warns Aliceliese that Miliver and her sisters would never approve of that, but Aliceliese simply doesn't care. In the next instant, everyone senses a massive surge of power, and the sky literally splits open above them. As they watch, the Great Witch Nebulis flies out of the crack, and Mismis immediately accuses Aliceliese of setting the whole thing up. Aliceliese says she's just as confused as she is, but then Nebulis unleashes a barrage of blasts to wipe out Iska and Mismis. At that moment, Miliver finally notices the sudden surge of power, rushes over to check, and is shocked to find out Nebulis has woken up. This gets her super hyped, since it means she's finally going to destroy the Empire. Meanwhile, Aliceliese and Rin also get knocked down by Nebulis' attack. Mismis then asks why she's attacking mages too. Aliceliese and Rin figure it must be some kind of reaction to whatever power woke Nebulis up in the first place. Either way, Aliceliese is clearly annoyed by the whole situation, since she wanted to finally settle the score with Iska. She admits she got all melty inside after their first encounter, and says that's the main reason she spent all day today trying to dig up everything about him. As she tells Nebulis to chill out, the Great Witch calls her a traitor and attacks immediately, but Rin rushes in and shields Aliceliese from the hit. Except she ends up getting knocked out by the intense heat, and Aliceliese panics. Iska then reminds her to use her ice powers, before telling Mismis to get Rin to the hospital. As soon as Mismis takes off with Rin, he draws his swords to face Nebulis, but she instantly recognizes them as belonging to Master Crosswell. Iska asks how she knows him, but she answers, by attacking. So the two team up to defend themselves. Even so, Nebulis dominates them easily and unleashes a nasty wind technique. Iska then grabs Aliceliese' arm and says they need to trust each other, since they both want the same thing. Aliceliese agrees, and they combine their powers for a second strike against Nebulis. After launching Aliceliese across the ice like a ping-pong ball, Iska speeds in to close the distance, but Nebulis turns all her attention on him. Aliceliese then builds an endless staircase of ice and burns her last bit of energy to shield Iska, letting him slice off Nebulis' wings. With that, she falls back into the crack in space. Iska then turns down Aliceliese' offer to serve him, but the two agree to a truce for the day, since neither one has any energy left to keep fighting. A few nights after that, Iska takes another L at the casino. Jin suggests it's time to bail before he leaves everyone homeless, but Mismis tells him not to give up and dashes off to find more money, while Nene asks why they're even there in the first place. A few days before that, Risha had told Mismis to bring the whole squad, since it'd be their last chance to have fun before working under her on some super important mission. When Mismis asked what the mission was about, Risha just smiled and ran off. Back in the present, Mismis comes back and admits she's suspicious, since this could be their last mission ever, and that's exactly why Risha decided to give them one last chill trip. Jin tells her to stop sweating the small stuff, since everyone's gonna kick the bucket eventually anyway. He then asks why she picked this particular spot for the trip. Mismis brings up the latest battle tank model. Nene gets excited since she also knows a thing or two about tanks. Mismis says she's planning to win the tank with whatever cash they rake in. That way they'd have a better shot at surviving the mission. While everyone praises her delusion and heads back to the games, Rin shows up with Aliceliese and excitedly explains how blowing money at a casino is basically the best way to live like a princess. Rin doesn't care about any of that and says she just wanted to go to the neutral city. Rin asks if she's just looking for another chance to see Iska. Aliceliese instantly denies it and says she's only trying to beat him, but Rin already knows she just wants a chance to be alone with him. Rin then says she can do that during an actual battle, so they head in without noticing Iska, who's still losing at every single game. After Rin finds a machine for Aliceliese and tells her to go get that win, Aliceliese starts thinking back on her plan to fight Iska and begins searching for the perfect date to make it happen. As she thinks over which days Iska might be free, Rin asks if she's planning a duel or a wedding. Aliceliese denies any romantic thoughts about Iska again and insists she just wants to beat him. But Rin's done with the excuses, so she starts up the game. Moments later, Aliceliese hears weird noises coming from the machine and asks Rin what that is. Turns out she just hit the jackpot. Rin runs off to call the crew while people gather around to check it out. Right then, Nene comes over to congratulate Aliceliese. And when she mentions that a prize that big would help Mismis reach her goal, Aliceliese hands over part of the winnings to her. Nene is shocked and asks if she's serious. Aliceliese explains she doesn't really need it anyway. Nene goes back to the others and tells them what happened. Mismis instantly gets her confidence back, but Jin tells her to hold off on that until she wins her own jackpot. Nene then describes what Aliceliese was like, but Iska refuses to believe it was actually her. A few minutes later, Aliceliese is heading out with Rin when she spots a fortune-telling stand. Curious, she goes in alone and asks the lady when she'll meet a special someone. The lady asks if it's about a boyfriend, and Aliceliese freaks out. Then she starts the reading and says the special someone is always close by. Aliceliese finds Rin outside and says she didn't get the answer she wanted, so they keep walking. Right then, Iska also spots the stand and decides to get a reading too. Once inside, he makes the exact same request, and when the lady asks where he met this special someone, he starts rambling on about everything he's been through with Aliceliese. Except the lady gets bored fast and shuffles the cards before telling him the exact same thing she told Aliceliese. Around the same time, Risha gets called in by her superiors for a meeting. Turns out a new rift just opened up at the border, and they want her to get Iska's squad out there ASAP. The next day, Iska gets back from the mini-trip with the rest of the group. Risha calls to cancel their regular mission and tells them about the border rift. The first time a rift like this formed, it created Nebulis, along with the power every mage uses. There's a high chance the Sovereignty will attack because of this new rift, so their mission is to defend it. Meanwhile, Aliceliese is trying to enjoy her daydreams about a date with Iska, but then Rin shows up to tell her about the rift. She's shocked, since there's an entire royal family whose only job is to report incidents like this. Rin then says they must be trying to hoard all that power for themselves without telling anyone. A little over an hour later, they show up at the Zoa family's house, and Rin suddenly senses a presence and stops an attack from a masked man. He says he was just messing with them, but Aliceliese asks why he keeps hiding his face behind a mask. He ignores that and says the rift isn't something they need to freak out over, but Aliceliese refuses to believe him and says she needs to see it with her own eyes. The next day, at the Empire Army base, Mismis meets up with the rest of the squad to talk about a meeting she had with her superiors. As she's explaining how they kept complaining about incomplete reports, they try to comfort her, but then she spots an old friend and calls her over. After a tight hug, Mismis introduces Noro, who then says the only thing different about her now is the monster size of her chest. Mismis gets flustered and tries to defend her flat status, but everyone gets called over to hear a speech from a soldier named Nameless. After everyone lines up, Mismis gets intimidated by Nameless's whole aura, while Iska explains that he's actually a sacred disciple. Nameless says their only mission is to capture the rift before the Sovereignty does, or destroy it completely. He also declares that nobody's allowed to get in his way, since he's willing to do whatever it takes to win. With that, the mission begins. And after hours of a pretty pointless search, Mismis gets a call from Noro, warning her that 3 of their units have vanished. Worried, Mismis suggests heading back to base for new orders, but Nameless says to keep going, since 3 missing units isn't reason enough to stop. While Nine and Jin complain about how unfair the order is, Iska decides to go ask about it himself, since he and Nameless used to be squad mates. But the second he steps into the mission control room, they ask for his rank and call him an idiot for showing up without his captain. Luckily, Nameless recognizes him, but instead of hearing out his question, he calls him a traitor and says he has no right to ask anything. Feeling defeated, Iska starts to give up, but then Mismis walks in and offers to speak for him, which catches him off guard. A while later, Iska tells Jin and Nene that Nameless refused to give Mismis an answer. And while they're weighing whether to go rogue, Mismis walks into the shower without realizing her plans have already been found out. Nine ends up just staring at her, totally caught off guard, and she gets embarrassed and tells Jin to take the blame. Around the same time, Aliceliese arrives at a top-secret mage outpost, and every guard at the station freaks out at the sight of her. They explain the area's off-limits, but she ignores them and heads straight for the rift. Right then, the masked man shows up, so she asks if he's planning to hoard all that power for himself. After claiming he just found the place and was on his way to tell Miliver, the masked man introduces them to a tiny little girl named Kissing. He tells Kissing that Aliceliese is family, but she gets shy and hides behind him. He then apologizes for making her uncomfortable and assures Aliceliese that Kissing is more than enough to protect the rift. Aliceliese doubts that and asks if she's really that strong. The masked man says Kissing might even outpower her. Aliceliese admits that's possible, but still wants to know why he's stockpiling all this power. When she asks if he's planning to start a war against the Empire, the masked man admits that he is, and says that's what every mage has wanted for a century. Meanwhile, Mismis and the others stop near the rift, since they start picking up astral art readings coming from the base. After Mismis confirms the reading with Command, Jin says it's probably the mages who kidnapped the 3 missing units. After Command decides to move to a second base and tells them to keep searching for the rift, Mismis looks around before deciding to head toward that obvious surge of astral energy. Nene gets excited and says they might get a reward for finding it first, but Jin tells her to chill since another squad already got there first. After seeing it's Noro's squad, Mismis runs over to hug her, and when Noro asks if they saw the astral light, Mismis happily says yes. After commenting that it would have been better if they hadn't seen that, Noro explains how the Sovereignty set traps in the valley to capture any Empire troops that got too close. That's how the 3 missing units got captured. In the next instant, she grabs Mismis and stops Jin and Iska from attacking before ripping off a fake skin patch that reveals her mage insignia. After the rest of her squad does the same, Mismis asks what she did with the real Noro. But then Noro grabs her by the throat and says she's always been herself before frying Mismis from the inside. Before Jin and Iska can react, Noro's entire squad gets taken down by Nameless, who then reveals himself and says he already knew about her. After saying he won't be able to get her out of there alive, Noro flees with Mismis in tow. And when Nameless tries to cut them both down, Iska blocks the attack. Jin fires a tracker onto the back of the truck. After Noro escapes, Iska asks Nameless if he was really willing to kill her, and Nameless asks if he wants to go back to prison, since defying a superior can count as treason. Jin then says there's no point arguing, since they're already tracking the truck. But Nameless ignores that and says they're going to blow up the whole rift, even if Mismis is still in there. A few minutes later, Aliceliese is still stuck thinking about what the masked man is planning when they hear about Noro's return. Aliceliese goes to check, and is shocked to see Mismis, while Rin knocks her out to stop her from rambling any further. Aliceliese then decides to go fight Iska at his camp, and when Rin tries to talk her out of it, she insists this might be her best shot at fighting him. Meanwhile, Iska and the others finally find the outpost. He tries to think of a plan to save Mismis before Nameless launches the missile strike. In the next instant, a missile lands a few yards from the outpost, and Nini explains they're still calibrating the exact location for the main strike, which gives them about an hour to save Mismis. With that, Nini storms the outpost, and while she distracts the regular mages, Iska rushes in to save Mismis, only to run into Noro instead. She attacks right away, but he blocks it easily, so Kissing decides to step in. Noro gets excited and thanks her for coming to help, but Kissing ignores her and uses her astral art to completely erase a second missile from existence. As Noro starts gushing like a stone Taylor Swift stan, Iska realizes he needs to bring his best if he wants to win this fight. He cuts Mismis's chains and tells her to stay back. Elsewhere, Rin just finishes searching the Empire's first base. She lets Aliceliese know, who decides to head over. Right then, Rin senses movement nearby and shoves Aliceliese out of the way, taking a slash from Nameless instead. After he reveals himself and compliments Rin, Aliceliese apologizes in advance and says she's about to unload all her rage on him since she couldn't find the person she was looking for. At the same time, Kissing is shocked that Iska dodges her first attack, so she scatters spikes across the cave and fires straight at him. As they tear through thick metal plates like they're nothing, Iska blocks everything like it's just toothpicks until he closes in on her. Kissing is shocked again and admits he's a serious opponent, but instead of giving up, she rebuilds the missile and detonates it right above Iska's head. Back at the base, Aliceliese manages to knock Nameless back with her powers and unleashes a rain of icicles to skewer him like an ice cream stick. Except he dodges all of them easily before sending the last 2 right back at her. After Rin throws herself in front of Aliceliese again, Nameless calls Aliceliese a backyard Elsa since she can't land a hit to save her life. The taunt works, and Aliceliese turns the entire base into an ice rink, but Nameless had already slipped away before that happened. In the next instant, the missile explodes, but Iska survives and asks Kissing how she got such a dangerous ability. She answers by summoning a dragon made of spikes, but Iska pushes through and finally takes her down. Seeing this, Noro flees, so Mismis runs toward Iska, but he suddenly moves to dodge an attack from the masked man. As Iska watches in shock, the man grabs Kissing and promises to come back before tossing Mismis straight into the rift. Iska immediately dives into the rift after Mismis, and Aliceliese jumps in too to complain about how she spent the entire day looking for him. She offers to help, but he has to agree to a duel afterward. Naturally, Iska agrees, so she tries to pull them both out, but the rift collapses. Minutes later, Aliceliese wakes up on the other side of the plains, and Rin quickly checks if she's okay. Meanwhile, Jin and Neni find Iska and ask how he managed to get out of there with Mismis. A few days later, Aliceliese keeps thinking back on how she held his hand while they were spinning inside the rift. When Rin shows up, she denies even thinking about him, until Rin gets sick of the lies and suggests heading back to the neutral city. She says it'd be better if Aliceliese finally got that duel she's wanted with him. While Aliceliese gets excited to see him again, Rin shares the feeling but just wants to get this whole thing settled once and for all. Around the same time, Mismis apologizes to Jin for being completely useless and making the whole squad look like a bunch of losers. Iska and Nene tell her not to worry about it, since nobody saw that attack coming, but Jin insists she was genuinely pathetic during the fight. He's especially annoyed that she just stood there like a brain-dead mannequin and let the masked man shove her into the rift. Mismis then apologizes to Iska for putting him in so much danger. When Nene asks if he's actually okay, he says there's nothing to worry about and tells Mismis to stop apologizing for good. In the next instant, she grabs at her insignia. Nene offers to grab an ice pack in case she's in pain, but Mismis just says it feels weird. Right then, Risha shows up and announces that the super important mission is to sneak into the Sovereignty and basically kidnap Queen Nebulis. Naturally, everyone's shocked and wonders if she's been drinking. Iska especially looks worried. Risha asks why, since he usually loves impossible missions. Iska explains that while he's into the occasional near-death experience, this is way out of their league. They then ask how she plans to get past the Sovereignty's border, since they use mage insignias as passports to identify citizens. Risha points out that it was actually the Empire that created the insignia ID system in the first place. After the Great War and the witch trials, the Sovereignty gained independence and started using the same system to keep Empire spies and citizens out. Risha tells everyone not to worry, since Command already has a plan to sneak them in. She just refuses to explain what the plan is and says they'll find out during the mission. A few days later, Rin and Aliceliese show up at the fountain to wait for Iska again. Aliceliese quickly gets fed up since they've been coming out here to see Iska for 3 days straight now. After thinking it over, Rin says he probably didn't survive the rift. Aliceliese refuses to accept that and suggests splitting up to cover more ground. As she heads off in one direction, Rin asks why she isn't worried about the upcoming elections. She knows Aliceliese's sisters and a bunch of other noble families are going to compete for the throne, but since Aliceliese only cares about Iska, she promises to help her get over the obsession. Elsewhere, Iska and the rest of the squad are still wondering what this mission plan even is. Right then, Nene notices Mismis keeps scratching her arm and asks if she's actually okay. Mismis says it's nothing new, but Jin asks if she caught some kind of allergy from oversleeping. As Mismis gets flustered and tells him to stop making stuff up, Iska tells Nene to grab some medicine just in case it's a bug bite. Except the moment Mismis takes off her top, everyone freezes in shock because she's got an insignia. Mismis sees it too, and her brain just short-circuits, so she asks if they've ever seen such a weird bug bite before. After failing to rub it off, she insists it's not what it looks like. But then Iska grabs her and says they still trust her, before asking if she knows where it came from. When Jin says she was probably possessed by an astral spirit during the rift explosion, she completely loses it. As she goes through her first ever existential crisis, Jin and Nene talk about what her life would be like as a captured traitor. Luckily, Iska tells her not to worry and promises to keep the insignia a secret from everyone in case she's not ready to turn herself in. After Jin and Nene also promise to do the same, Mismis gets emotional and asks how they're all giving up their freedom for her so easily. As she cries a river, Aliceliese heads home frustrated. But when Rin suggests giving up the search for him, she starts listing off other spots in the neutral city they haven't checked yet. A few hours later, Jin and Nene show up in Iska's room to come up with a plan to hide the insignia, so Mismis can keep living a normal life. They spend a few minutes trying to figure it out, and eventually realize just how much danger she's in, since the Empire could even execute her if they found out. As they keep brainstorming, Iska spots an old ticket from the art exhibit in the neutral city, so he decides to take her there for some fresh air. The next day, walking through the neutral city, he explains how the whole world used to be united in the past. That is, until astral energy was discovered and the Empire got scared of who was getting powers. After Iska promises to fight until she can live freely as herself, Mismis gets emotional again. As she goes to grab some drinks, Aliceliese shows up in the city. Minutes later, Iska is still thinking about how insane the plan to kidnap Miliver is. He doesn't even notice Aliceliese standing right in front of him until she asks to share the bench. She's shocked to see him too, and explains how hard she's been searching for him the past few days. When he tells her to sit, she refuses and says Rin would be mad if the two of them sat together. He offers to stand instead, but Aliceliese refuses that too and ends up sitting with him anyway. When she asks what finally brought him back to the city, he says it's nothing important, but Aliceliese senses something's off. She asks again, but he keeps insisting it's nothing serious, so she tries to short-circuit his brain with her melons. Right then, Rin finally comes back, and Aliceliese instantly acts like he's the one messing up her plans. He tries to explain what actually happened, but she doesn't even care and hands each of them a drink. After Aliceliese grabs hers, he opens the can and notices a weird smell, but drinks it anyway like an idiot. Surprising absolutely nobody, he gets dizzy and passes out. Rin then apologizes to Aliceliese and says she figured he'd notice since he's supposedly so powerful. After tossing him over her shoulder like a rag doll, Mismis shows up. Aliceliese tells her to chill, but she refuses and demands to know why they're breaking neutrality rules by kidnapping him. When Aliceliese refuses to explain, Miss gets angry, which triggers a sudden burst of astral energy from her arm. Aliceliese immediately freezes her foot to the spot before fleeing with Rin and Iska. Minutes later, Risha hears about this and goes to talk to the Emperor. Minutes later, Rin drives toward the capital in a car, but Aliceliese tells her to find another entrance, since Iska won't be allowed into the capital. As they head to a different city, Risha starts a meeting with the Senate to discuss the Emperor's new decision to block the infiltration of the Sovereignty. After mentioning that several witnesses spotted Rin driving toward the Sovereignty's prison sector, she reminds everyone that a demon who fought the Great Witch in the past is being held prisoner there. She even suggests freeing the demon to gain an edge in the war. After everyone agrees to her plan, she goes to meet up with Jin and the girls, who are worried sick and desperate to save Iska. Risha claims she's also working to free him, but then opens a box full of astral energy capsules. Seeing the confused looks on their faces, she uses one of the capsules to give Neni an insignia, explaining that it's the perfect way to sneak into the Sovereignty to save him. When she tosses one to Jin, he goes over to Miss and fakes using it on her, just to keep her secret safe. After helping him get his own insignia too, Risha explains the plan for them to infiltrate the prison sector and free Iska, while other soldiers create a distraction so they can escape and capture Alicelies's mom. Meanwhile, Rin just entered the prison sector, and after telling her to head straight to the hotel, Aliceliese starts messing around with Iska, who's still passed out. Just as she decides to get herself under control, Rin slams the brakes to save a cat, sending Iska face first into Alicelies's golden globes. She shoves him off right away, but then he wakes up, and she starts arguing with Rin about the dosage she used to drug his drink. When Aliceliese tries to blame Iska for casually accepting a drink from the enemy, he calmly says how disappointed he is, adding that he thought the Ice Calamity Witch was better than some sneaky little cheater. While the two of them start arguing over who's to blame, Jin and the girls manage to get into the prison sector. And as he heads toward where Iska's supposed to be held, Risha keeps a close eye on them. A few minutes later, Rin finally reaches the hotel, and after opening the door, warns Iska not to try anything funny, since getting caught could mean execution for him. Once inside, Aliceliese decides to relax. Rin offers to take Iska to a special room she prepared just for him. But Aliceliese stops her and says she's just looking for an excuse to torture him. Rin, again, reminds her that Iska is the enemy and might try to get handsy with her at night. After Iska insists he never even thought about that, Rin decides to just keep watch over him herself. Aliceliese then heads to her presidential suite to relax. Elsewhere, Risha calls the rest of the squad to check in on their progress. Jin explains that the whole sector is packed with prison cells. Risha then guides them to the secret hideout she's been watching everything from, but they're confused about how she got into the Sovereignty by herself. But before they can ask any questions, she says she knows exactly where Iska's being held, which gets them curious. Around the same time, Rin tells Iska that Aliceliese is the only one who genuinely cares about keeping him alive. In the next instant, she grabs a knife and cuts herself before explaining her master plan. Make it look like he attacked first, leaving her with no choice but to land a killing blow. She attacks right away, so Iska starts dodging while trying to talk his way out of this whole mess. As Iska fights for his life, Aliceliese is off thinking up new ways to get close to him, but eventually snaps out of the daydream and steps out, only to see Rin trying to psych out her man. After spotting Aliceliese and warning Rin, she refuses to believe it and figures he's just trying to distract her, until Aliceliese grabs her shoulder and asks if this is really how she planned to keep watch over him. Right then, Jin and the girls finally make their way into one of the prison facilities, but they notice Risha didn't come with them and get suspicious. Jin starts to wonder if Command doesn't actually care about Iska at all. Meanwhile, Aliceliese just had the brilliant idea of tying herself to Iska. She tells Rin to go get the keys. That way, he'd have zero chance of escaping. After she leaves, Iska asks Aliceliese how exactly she plans to sleep or use the bathroom for the rest of the night, and she finally realizes how dumb that was. She calls for Rin right away until she comes back and separates the two of them. While Aliceliese heads to take a bath, Rin keeps watch over Iska again, but this time without trying to behead him. When he asks what their plan is for him, Rin explains he's going to be locked up forever. Right then, Aliceliese comes back with her assets bouncing in the breeze, so Iska looks away to keep his inner lightsaber in check. When he notices the giant insignia on her back, she asks what he thinks of it, but also catches Rin's worried look. Aliceliese assures her she's just curious what he thinks. So Iska says he knows a certain team captain in the Empire who's actually a mage too. After promising to protect her with his own life and saying he doesn't judge people by their powers or what nation they were born in, Aliceliese asks what he thinks of when her name comes to mind. When Iska says she's just an opponent he needs to defeat, her heart skips a beat, since she never expected a guy like him to completely ignore the fact that she's a princess. Shocked, Rin scolds him for treating the princess like some regular girl. But Aliceliese cuts in and says she's always wanted a guy who wouldn't treat her like a trophy. Except, when he suddenly tells her to stop swinging her charms in his face, she gets flustered and tries to attack him. Meanwhile, Risha just walked into a special cell holding a demon named Salinger. As she starts drooling over his body, he gets tired of her creepy stare and asks how she managed to break into the prison. Risha then explains she already had specific plans set up for his escape and offers freedom in exchange for him backing the Empire's plan to capture Miliver. After thinking it over for a bit, Salinger decides the outside world might be more interesting after being locked up for so long. So he blows up the exit. Meanwhile, Aliceliese is at the hotel with Iska, asking why he can't sleep. After he claims he's just enjoying the view, she says most of the buildings he's looking at are prison facilities used to hold the Sovereignty's most dangerous criminals. Except almost none of them have any powers, other than the demon Salinger. Surprised, Iska asks why she calls him a demon, just like everyone in the Empire does. Aliceliese says that while she's not a fan of that disrespectful term, it's the only way to describe a mage who betrayed the Sovereignty. She also asks him to keep this conversation a secret from Rin. But then the psycho dummy shows up and nearly gives Aliceliese a heart attack when Rin warns that the security systems just picked up Imperial soldiers in the sector. Aliceliese tries to blame Iska, but he reminds her they left him passed out hours ago. Rin then tells her not to worry, since the alarms went off in every prison facility at the same time. Jin and the crew also heard the alarms, and while they're freaking out thinking they got caught, Jin says they're still safe, since Sovereignty soldiers would have already surrounded them ages ago if they knew their location. In the next instant, Nene tells everyone to be quiet, since she can hear soldiers approaching. But that just makes Jin even more curious about what's happening in the prison. After a sudden explosion rocks the entire facility, Risha calls them up and apologizes for getting Iska's location wrong, before telling everyone to do whatever it takes to escape. Jin draws his blaster right away, while the soldiers split up to search for them. Meanwhile, Aliceliese also just saw the explosion, and Rin gets worried about the possibility of Salinger escaping. Aliceliese immediately starts freaking out and says they need to stop him, since he's going after Miliver. After telling Rin to go get the car, she apologizes to Iska for not being able to explain everything before asking if he can help her out. In the next instant, she tells him not to worry and takes off running. But before they leave, she hands him a fresh napkin and apologizes for ruining the one he gave her at the opera. Around the same time, Jin and the girls find another spot to hide from the soldiers. But after realizing escaping together would be impossible, he tells them to wait for his signal to make a run for it. Nene catches on to what he's trying to do and offers to be the decoy instead of him. While the two argue over who's going to sacrifice themselves, Mismi suddenly hands over Iska's swords and says she's sick of being the pathetic weakling of the group. She then flashes her insignia and runs out, pretending to be an escaped prisoner. She threatens the guards, thinking they'll obey, but they do the exact opposite. So she takes off running while they chase her down. Right as they corner her and try to finish her off, Jin and Nene take both of them out. But the fear of nearly getting wrecked makes Mismis cry a river of tears. Around the same time, Iska is fed up with his own situation, since all he can do is watch everything from the room. But when he hears the phone ring, he picks up and hears Jin, who explains what's going on. After he shares what happened to him too, Jin asks if he can find a way out of the hotel, but he says that won't be possible thanks to the cuffs Rin used to chain him up. In the next instant, Iska realizes Aliceliese didn't just leave him any random napkin, so he rushes to the table and finds the hidden key tucked inside it. As he tells Jin to find an exit, Alicheliese's car gets attacked. She and Rin jump out right before it explodes. Seeing so much destruction in the sector, she's furious and freezes up a massive wall of fire before taking command of every soldier present. While ordering Rin to stop Salinger, Iska regroups with the rest of the squad. But after grabbing his swords, he tells them to wait behind the hotel and rushes inside. Right then, Rin has already found Salinger, and when he tries to melt her brain the same way he did to Risha, she ignores it and vows to make him pay for betraying the Sovereignty. Salinger explains that his status as self-proclaimed king gives him the right to take as many spirits as he wants, but she says all he's gonna get is unlimited prison food. She attacks with her ninja stars, but Salinger blocks and shoves her back, so she summons her Earth Golem. Salinger destroys the golem easily, but Rin still tries to attack, so he uses the same Earth technique to put her in her place. Even clearly outmatched, Rin tries to attack again, and even after he knocks her down, she still tries to close in for another hit, so he decides to finish her off for good. Luckily, Iska blocks the attack and steps in front to protect her. Rin then warns Iska that he's about to fight an extremely powerful demon, one who took on the Great Witch all by herself. Even so, Iska says he's ready to give it his best shot, but demands she let him leave the city with Jin and the girls once he wins. Rin agrees, so Iska grabs both swords, and Salinger responds by unleashing a powerful astral art that scares Aliceliese. She's surprised by it, but also starts to understand why Aliceliese can't get enough of him. After Iska says he's only doing this to earn a free pass out of the city, Salinger is surprised an Empire soldier is even fighting him. So he unleashes another powerful blast that sends waves all the way to Aliceliese. Around the same time, a palace butler spots Princess Sisbel alone outside. He tells her to head back in, since the alarm systems are still active. When she asks what's going on, he explains the situation and says he only got worried after hearing that Aliceliese is also at the prison facility, leading soldiers in an attack. Right then, Salinger decides to finish Iska off with a single strike. But after he cuts straight through the attack, Salinger stops to ask how, because even though powerful people have managed to block it before, nobody's ever cut through it. He's especially curious how Iska can even see it coming. But then Rin realizes Iska was watching the flames to figure out the attack's direction. Salinger notices this too, and asks how he's gotten so strong. But Iska says he wasn't born with it. To rule out any suspicion of cheating, Salinger compliments him for not being completely useless like Rin. But when he tries to unleash another attack, Rin warns him about what to expect. Salinger then sends her flying and tells her to stop interrupting the fun, before firing at Iska again. Iska dodges it and finally gets close enough for a brutal strike. But Salinger uses his wind technique to push him back before switching to earth magic again. Even so, Iska just uses the opening to close the distance even more. Then Salinger starts chanting a powerful spell. Rin tells Iska to jump clear right away, and he does just before the ground turns into a massive pool of magma. After Iska thanks Rin for the help, she decides to try working together for once, since they clearly can't survive on their own. Salinger says that doesn't mean anything, since the two of them are still way too weak to beat him. Elsewhere, Aliceliese gives orders to her soldiers, but then suddenly hears Nameless and blocks his attack. He tells her to surrender since there's no way the Sovereignty wins this, but she's already itching for a fight and challenges him. After he suddenly vanishes, Salinger unleashes one of his most powerful techniques yet, and when Iska tries to cut through it, he takes a massive hit that nearly turns him into a shish kebab. Curious, Rin asks Salinger if he only steals astral spirits to dominate his enemies. But then Salinger decides to tell her about his life's mission, merging humanity with astral spirits. She vows to stop him no matter what, but he's not fazed at all, and asks how she plans to do that when her most powerful ally couldn't even handle his most basic fire art. Rin tells Salinger to stop being so cocky, since Iska won't be beaten that easily. But Salinger refuses to believe it and decides to finish her off to shut her up. In the next instant, Iska blocks his attack and fires off one of his own, but Salinger runs through the beam while struggling to believe he survived it. Iska then explains how he froze his entire body solid at the last second. But Salinger is shocked and asks if he's actually crazy, since using such a dangerous technique on himself could have ended his life. After Iska says he's determined to win no matter what, Salinger jumps to the highest point of the facility and decides to end things with a special technique he's been working on in prison. After Rin summons a golem to protect Iska, Salinger decides to torch her first. But as he rains lightning down on her, Aliceliese freezes everything solid and rushes in to help. Iska tries to attack again, so Salinger converts his astral energy into swords for a counterattack, but Iska easily destroys them with his own. In the next instant, Salinger admits Iska is powerful and vows to come back again before dropping into the underground prison for a quick escape. A while later, Rin finally finishes getting healed up and tells Aliceliese not to worry about the other prisoners, since they've all been escorted back to their respective facilities. Aliceliese decides to go give her mom a report and thinks back on the smile Iska had before he left. Elsewhere, Nameless finally gets back to the Empire and reveals himself to be none other than Risha in disguise wearing a suit. The real Nameless asks how her mission went and says she didn't even need the disguise, but she insists it was a vital part of the Sovereignty mission. After saying something about pleasing the 8 great apostles, Nameless asks if she's going to report to the Emperor, and she says yes. Before that, she walks into a meeting with the Senate, and they get excited about what happened in the Sovereignty before discussing an ultra-secret plan. Around the same time, Iska finally manages to get out of the Sovereignty with the girls, but Nene is still worried about him, so he assures her he's just tired after everything that happened. Mismis is worried too, so he assures her again that he's fine, before asking about her insignia. She freaks out and says she completely forgot about it, before asking them to help find a solution. Around the same time, Aliceliese gets back to the palace and praises Rin for being so versatile during the fight. But after thinking back on what happened, Rin admits it was all thanks to Iska's help. All this talk about Iska makes Aliceliese daydream about being in the same room as him again. This time, Rin catches her in the act, but decides to let it slide, since she's melting over Iska too. As Aliceliese excitedly asks if she can finally say his name freely now, Princess Sisbel overhears the conversation and realizes they're talking about the same guy who freed her from an Empire prison. She then prays to the gods that she'll get to see him again, so she can finally express her gratitude. A few minutes later, Risha changes clothes and walks into the Emperor's chamber with Nameless to discuss what happened with Salinger. But the Emperor, who's actually a cat hybrid named Yun, tells her to forget all that boring stuff, since he only wants to talk about Aliceliese and the fact that she's clearly obsessed with Iska. Around the same time, Sisbel has a dream where Miliver gets attacked, and as soon as she wakes up, she tries to go see her. But after finding her busy with a bunch of politicians, Sisbel heads back to her room. A few minutes later, the butler shows up to say Miliver is calling for her, so Sisbel heads up to the throne room. Miliver then tells her to visit a city called Alcemira to check whether they've decided to back the Sovereignty, since they still haven't declared loyalty or neutrality. She offers to send some guards along on the trip too, but Sisbel tells her not to worry about it and heads back to her room, while a servant tells Miliver that her oldest daughter just got back. Right then, Iska just got back from a physical exam, and after he explains the process, Nini mentions everyone will need to go through another one in a week to check Risha's temporary insignia. He doesn't notice Mismis is taking that news way too seriously. But before he can check on her, Risha gets dragged off by a girl named Michaela. Naturally, Mismis gets worried and asks if something happened, but Michaela says they've all just been overworked because of Risha's obsession with perfection. So she orders everyone to take 60 days off. After they head out, Mismis gets excited, since this time off means they don't have to go to the exam. Except Jin reminds her they still need a permanent solution. So Iska suggests taking a trip during the break so they can brainstorm ideas together. While Nena suggests going to a resort far away from the Empire, Rin brings a stack of new paperwork for Aliceliese to fill out. But she gets frustrated and asks for a break, since she's been working all day. Rin agrees with her and decides to stop working before going to make her some tea. After serving it, Aliceliese mentions her oldest sister just got back from a political campaign and decides to go see her. On the way, she runs into Sisbel, who turns around to avoid talking to her. Rin quickly notices Sisbel's been acting really weird lately, but Aliceliese says it's nothing to worry about, since everyone's stressed about the upcoming elections. She explains it'll basically decide which of them takes Miliver's place. Right then, Sisbel had already gotten in the car for the trip Miliver mentioned. When the butler asks why she's refusing to bring guards, she shows him a conversation between the earlier politician and another respected figure, just to prove that nobody in the palace or the royal family has pure intentions. As soon as she leaves, the masked man, who'd been watching all of this the whole time, heads back inside to greet the biggest unit on the planet, named L. She's apparently the oldest daughter everyone's been talking about all day. After they exchange greetings, she tells him there's someone in power working with the Empire against them. Naturally, the masked man gets curious to hear more, but she just bounces her water balloons in his face and promises to fill him in later. Elsewhere, Iska and the rest of the squad just arrived in Alcemira for their trip. When Mismis tells him to blow up a pool float, he reminds her they haven't even checked into a hotel yet. A while later, she changes with Nene and joins the guys at the beach, before asking for their opinion on her bikini. A few hours later, Jin carries Mismis in his arms, since she apparently can't handle 2 drinks. After Iska tells him to take her back to the hotel, he leaves, and Iska decides to go get supplies with Nene, but she asks for a few minutes to use the bathroom. As soon as she steps away, Iska runs straight into Princess Sisbel and tries to help her up right away, but then recognizes her from that night at the Empire prison. Nene comes back right at that moment, so he tries to explain who Sisbel is, but she's already gone. He then decides to focus on the shopping, while Sisbel keeps running until she reaches a safe distance. The butler, who'd been chasing after her, finally catches up, and she excitedly tells him she finally found the hero who saved her all those years ago. While she keeps freaking out, Aliceliese tries to get some rest, but then Rin reminds her she's got a meet and greet event scheduled for the morning. Naturally, she tries to complain about it, but then Miliver shows up and tells the two of them to follow her. A few hours after that, Sisbel takes the butler back to the spot where she ran into Iska and uses her astral art to replay exactly what happened after he ran off. Using that, she starts tracking him down, while Miliver takes Aliceliese and Rin upstairs and says they need to figure out why Sisbel's been acting so strange lately. While all this is happening, Sisbel traces Iska's steps until she finds the hotel. Around the same time, Miliver takes the girls to Sisbel's room, and while they're searching through her things, Aliceliese spots the newspaper clipping about Iska's imprisonment and is shocked, along with Rin. Right then, Sizbel has already found his room, but when she sneaks in to talk to him, he attacks, thinking she's an intruder. She then reveals who she really is, before asking him to come back with her to the Sovereignty. After a brief pause, Sizbel introduces herself and tells Iska she's not used to being overpowered by guys like him. As he immediately backs off and apologizes, Aliceliese is freaking out, since she's now convinced Sizbel saw her having fun with Iska in the neutral city. Rin tells her not to worry, since Sizbel's ability only lets her see what's happening in places she's already been to or is really close to. After thinking it all over again, Aliceliese says Sizbel probably overheard their conversation the other night. And Rin agrees, since that's the only explanation they can come up with. Meanwhile, back in Iska's room, Sizbel sits on his bed and apologizes for showing up so suddenly, before saying she never got the chance to properly thank him for saving her life. Sizbel then says that at first, she thought he was setting a trap for her that night. To show how grateful she is, she offers him a special bracelet, but Iska turns it down to save his aura points and acts like he isn't one mistake away from becoming a prisoner again. When she says people on both sides still remember that night, Iska asks if that's how she found out his name, and she calmly admits it, before promising to repay the favor somehow. After offering to reinstate him as a sacred disciple, Sizbel also promises to make sure he's always protected, but Iska would have to agree to come back with her to the Sovereignty. He immediately remembers that Aliceliese made a pretty similar offer, so he asks who she really is, and why she didn't pick someone from the countless subjects begging to be by her side. She claims to be just a regular servant of the royal family, and refuses to even consider bringing someone else. But seeing how confused he gets over all this, she promises to come back for a better conversation and leaves. She completely forgets the bracelet she brought, so Iska picks it up and wonders what to do with it. Meanwhile, Rin gets down on her knees to ask Miliver to send Aliceliese to Alcemira too, so he can have a conversation with Sizbel and figure out her connection to Iska. While that's happening, Sizbel leaves the hotel, wondering why Iska didn't melt for her the way any simp would. Meanwhile, the Senate holds a meeting to discuss their plan for Sizbel, since they just found out about her trip to Alcemira too, so they agree to use a giant mage-hunting suit of armor to capture her. The next day, Mismus gets excited because they can finally have barbecue for breakfast, but Jin gets tired of her rambling and tells her to zip it so they can actually decide what to do. Mismus then decides to help Nini, but that ends up sparking an argument over what to do first. When they try to get Iska's opinion, he barely even responds, since he's still stuck thinking about Sizbel. Meanwhile, Elle just met up with the masked man again, to tell him that the traitors she mentioned are actually her own sisters. He starts laughing right away and refuses to believe a joke like that, since it could revoke her family's claim to the throne. Surprisingly, Elle insists it's true, and says she doesn't care who wins the election, as long as the Sovereignty's people are protected. When the masked man asks why she hasn't done anything about it yet, Elle admits that being their oldest sister makes it hard to do what's necessary. That's exactly why she decided to tell him. After thinking it over, the masked man tells her not to worry, since he can easily make sure her sisters face justice. A few minutes later, Aliceliese starts regretting the decision to go to Alcemira alone. As the bus crosses the desert and the bus attendant tries to explain their current location, the driver slams the brakes and says he noticed abnormally large footprints. Aliceliese hops out right away and realizes the tracks are heading straight for the city. Over an hour later, Iska decides to switch hotels, and when Mismus asks why they're suddenly moving, he claims he found a better spot, when really he just wants to avoid Aliceliese and her creepy sister at all costs. In the next instant, Mismus's patch peels off, and after Nina sticks it back on, she gets upset since they still haven't found a permanent solution. Jin then points out how Nora went undetected for so long, and suggests looking for the same type of patch she used, since the Empire won't be able to tell the difference. As soon as they finally reach the hotel, Iska tells everyone to settle in while he goes to exchange money. Jin grabs his backpack and watches as he carefully looks around, then stops at a corner, since Sizbel managed to track him down again. With no other choice, he agrees to talk to her. So they head somewhere private, and he asks how she even found him in the first place. Sizbel then shows him her insignia and explains how she used her powers to replay the moment he booked this new hotel earlier. Surprised, Iska asks why she'd trust him with information like that. But Sizbel goes even further and reveals she's actually one of the princesses of the royal family. His expression makes Sizbel ask if he doesn't believe her. But Iska is just trying to figure out why the Sovereignty's princess needs his help. Sizbel then says someone in the royal family is planning to attack Miliver. She goes on to explain how her powers helped uncover a plot to spark an all-out war between the Sovereignty and the Empire, during which they'd take out Miliver and the entire current royal family. As Sizbel keeps explaining just how important it is for Iska to help them, Aliceliese arrives in the city and runs straight into Sizbel's butler, who says he's been looking for her for hours. A few minutes later, Sizbel finally finishes rambling. Then Iska calmly turns down the offer and says he only cares about creating peace between the two nations. He doesn't want to get tangled up in Sizbel's toxic family drama, but she insists he needs to do something to help. In the next instant, the masked lord shows up and claims he's disappointed in Sizbel for secretly plotting with an imperial soldier. Sizbel tries to explain what's actually going on, but he won't hear a word of it. After ordering his men to arrest her for treason, Sizbel takes off running while Iska holds them back and asks the masked man why he's turning against one of his own. He says Sizbel no longer has the Sovereignty's protection since she betrayed them. But right as he tries to capture her again, the mage-hunting robot shows up. Everyone's shaken by it, but the masked man still gives the order to capture Sizbel. Seeing this, Iska tries to step in, but the masked man distracts him using a teleport technique. Iska still tries to fight, but the masked man tells him to give it up, since he doesn't even have his swords on him. In the next instant, Jin shows up with the girls and tells the masked man to quit yapping. Right then, Mismis spots the masked lord, and after recognizing her too, he compliments her for surviving the rift explosion. In the next instant, the robotic Godzilla scans everyone for astral energy and immediately picks up on Mismis. The masked man notices and orders his soldiers to grab Sizbel before it reaches her. But as they try to fight back, he mows them down like crushed burgers. As he closes in on Sizbel to attack, the masked man decides to step in, but Jin stops him. He explains they only came to arrest Sizbel and don't want any trouble with Empire dogs. Jin also says he just wants revenge for what happened to Mismis. So the masked man tells him to bring it on, before shooting fireballs at them. After dodging alongside Mismis, Jin reminds him this is a neutral city, where fighting is strictly banned. The masked man says he already plans to pin the attack on them once his soldiers send them to Valhalla. As his soldiers create a thick fog to hide the attacks, Iska shields Sizbel from the robotic Godzilla. Neni then says she needs time to shut it down, or it'll send data from this fight to its superiors. Iska starts fighting right away and nearly gets turned into a kebab, but keeps holding off the attack while Sizbel asks why he's going so far to protect her. Watching him block such powerful attacks makes her want one of his swords for herself, but then Nini finally completes an electric pulse that completely fries Robozilla. Meanwhile, Jin and Mismis just got cornered, but he still manages to hold his own against the masked man. Except, after teleporting the knife to his other hand, the masked man slashes Jin, only to take a surprise bullet to the chest. He jumps back right away and compliments Jin's effort, before revealing he only fired a recording device into his chest, meant to serve as proof of Sizbel's treason. As Mismis checks on Jin, the masked man starts pouring out barrels of oil and says he wants to recreate the flames that destroyed the Empire long ago. Right as his soldiers try to light the fire, the flames get cut off by Mismis, who finally activates her powers to save Jin. Before the masked man can react, Jin shoots him in the head and shatters his mask. So he decides to bail just to hide his hideous face. Right then, Iska senses something coming from Robozilla and braces for another fight. But after recovering, it activates a secondary power source for one powerful strike. Everyone's confused, since it should have been completely out of juice. So Iska asks what its power source even is, but it suddenly fires the blast. Everyone dodges just in time, and Nini tries to fry it again immediately, but fails. So Iska tells her to go help Jin and Mismis, so he can focus on taking down Robozilla. Nene's worried, but knows she's too weak to help. So she runs off while Iska pushes forward, dodging every attack. Right as he jumps to strike the core, the robot starts charging up energy to fire at him. So Sizbel replays a sandstorm that happened before at that exact spot, to throw it off. As soon as she gives Iska the signal, he attacks and finally destroys the core. Except the astral spirit trapped inside the core breaks free and captures Sizbel. Right then, Neni had already found Jin and Mismis before running off to evacuate the residence. Iska manages to fight again, but the astral spirit quickly overwhelms him. Luckily, Aliceliese shows up and uses her abilities to force it back. But after holding it off and helping Iska get close enough to land a hit, the astral spirit breaks free and recharges the core for a powerful strike. Iska instantly reminds Aliceliese of the technique she used against Nebulis. So she conjures the ice flower and blocks the attack. Even so, the astral spirit starts chanting a spell in some strange language and unleashes a divine art that nearly turns them both into fairy dust. Iska gets furious, since it's destroying the entire city, and Aliceliese agrees they need to stop it no matter what. Except, since it's so powerful, she suggests setting their differences aside again, and Iska agrees. As they push forward, the spirit uses the same divine magic to attack, but they manage to dodge and block every hit until they get close enough to unleash one of their own. Combining Alicelice's astral art with the power of Iska's swords, they release a strike strong enough to counter the spirit's attack. And after pouring everything they've got into it, they finally win, and Sisbel gets her freedom back. While Jin and the others feel relieved, the Senate is disappointed and already starts cooking up another plan. Back in Alsamira, Aliceliese gets flustered being so close to Iska, and as she reminds him they're enemies, Sisbel wakes up and asks what kind of relationship the two of them have. Aliceliese instantly denies knowing him, but Sisbel senses something's off and demands the truth. After Aliceliese insists she doesn't know him, Iska backs her up. So Sisbel grabs Iska's hand and says he's going to become her knight in shining plot armor once she becomes queen. Shocked, Aliceliese tells Iska to reject her obviously delusional sister, but then he hears Miss calling his name and runs off to avoid both of them. As he regroups with Jin and the girls, Nameless and Risha discuss what happened and wonder why the Emperor still hasn't come back. Around the same time, Salinger arrives at a beautiful tree, miles away from the Sovereignty, and suddenly senses a familiar presence before getting excited to see Yoon, who then says he's got some exciting news. The next day, Miliver calls Elle to the throne room and says she already knows she leaked Sisbel's location, before asking if she's the real Elle. Elsewhere in the palace, Rin waits for Aliceliese, who's currently out with Iska in the neutral city. She tells him to act like strangers in front of anyone from the Sovereignty, including Sisbel, and he agrees. When she suddenly admits that keeping a secret with him is fun, he asks why she seems so excited. She denies feeling that way, but being so close to his face gets her all flustered. So she looks away and decides to head home, before her cat ears start twitching. And that's it for today. If you're into anime recaps like this one, drop a comment below. I read every single one. Also check out this other video, you're gonna love it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.